Hey, I better put these on. It's 6 p.m., Veterans Memorial Hall in Town of Sturbridge on 308 Main Street. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting is being conducted in person via remote means in accordance with applicable law. This means that members of the public body, as well as members of the public, may access meetings in person or via virtual means. In-person attendance will be possible if there are any members of the public body may attend remotely. With in-person attendance consisting of members of the public, the meeting may also be held remotely via the town's on-demand video broadcast or cable television on 191, or dial into the meeting at 774-304-1455, enter 1428 # for the meeting number and 1234 for the access code. Specific information and the guidelines for remote participation can be found on the town's website. When required by law or by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by in-person attendance or accessing the meeting remotely as noted above. All right? With that, we will, one thing that was mentioned to me recently, and it's a good idea, is when you speak, if you can remember to give your name, because in recent meetings that I've watched, I haven't been able to see the mouths moving on the individuals, and sometimes you don't know who just spoke. So if we can just do that a little bit, particularly when we're voting. So quorum check, starting with you, Mr. Barnacle.
Barnacle here. Stephen Chittister here. Roy Bishop here.
Ed Goodwin here.
Eric Gaspar here.
Great, all right. Public hearing, 6:05, 91 Clark Road, NOI,
Well,
new single-family home. What?
6:02, so you just gotta wait a couple minutes
You want, okay, you want to,
to open it.
couple of minutes, okay.
If you want, we do have number 6 on the agenda, it's a request for a certificate of compliance. We do have the
All right, okay, go
engineer on
ahead.
go-to meeting, so we
Yep.
can start with that one.
Sounds good.
There.
Go ahead, Beck.
So this is for 81 Paradise Lane. It's a request for a certificate of compliance, DEP file number 300-936. So we received the request. I performed a site visit. We also have an as-built plan and letter of substantial compliance from the engineer who went out for the project. At this time, I'd recommend issuance of a complete COC for the property. There was a couple perpetual conditions in there, noted as number 17, 21, and 22 within the orders of conditions. So, and just so you're aware, this property does have monumentation out there for, at the 25-foot buffer for a no disturb. So the monuments were in place. They were large boulders with plaques on them.
All right. Any comments, David?
No comments.
Stephen? Roy? Eric? No?
I'll make a motion that we approve the certificate of compliance for DEP file 300-0936.
I'll second that motion.
Any
David Barnacle, second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
David Barnacle in favor.
Stephen Chittister in favor. Roy Bishop in favor.
Ed Goodwin in favor?
Eric Gaspar in favor.
All right. Okay. Now we're at 6:05. So, 91 Clark Road, notice of intent, single-family home with associated site work, DEP file number 300-1112. Owner applicant S. Noyes, Representative Scott Morrison, Ecotech. Okay. Scott, you're on.
Good evening. Just for the record, Scott Morrison from Ecotech. This is 91 Clark Road, an application for Scott and Andrea Noyes. I'm not sure if the commission recalls, but this was filed by a previous applicant back in, I think, March of this year.
Yep.
What ended up happening is the previous applicant was looking to purchase the property. He ultimately walked away from the property. Mr. Noyes and his wife, who are on the call tonight, purchased this property, and we've subsequently filed a new notice of intent. Pretty much the same information that was provided in the original notice of intent application to kind of restart this whole process. So again, he purchased this lot early this year. If you look at the plan, they've acquired this piece. There's a sliver that was added to this property, so it's all one combined piece that's been recorded to the Worcester Registry of Deeds. So what they were able to do is, by acquiring this extra little sliver of property, they were able to use the existing area. It's like an existing access road or car path to get access to the site. There's an old foundation right where the proposed house foundation's proposed, septic system proposed behind that, as well as a barn. The site, grand total, I think, is about 10 acres, more or less. So there's a large parcel that wraps around the back and a substantial portion of property in the back that they have no intentions of touching. Proposing a stone construction entrance at the entrance, driveway to the house. This is border vegetated wetland, highlighted in green here. It wraps down and continues, kind of goes off-site this way, and then there's a second area of border vegetated wetland that wraps around and continues that way. There's no work within the 25-foot buffer. This is the 50-foot buffer. There's a little bit of work right in through here with the 50-foot buffer. I highlighted the 100-foot buffer, so just clips a corner of the house and the deck in the back, and then grading to the rear. This is the town of Sturbridge 200-foot buffer out here. So the septic system and grading for the septic system is within that 200-foot zone. Highlighted here is erosion control barrier, which wraps around the my recollection was there was a concern about the wetland boundary in this area here for the previous application. For this one, I've gone out and provided additional test plots to demonstrate the boundary here. Essentially what's, and I think your conservation agent can confirm this, is essentially what's happening is there's a significant amount of sediment that's getting washed down Clark Road. I'm not sure exactly where it's coming from. I think there's a gravel road further up the street. So it all washes down, enters through this catch basin here, and then discharges. The DPW had created a previously to the previous filing, they created like a little riprap plunge pool at that outlet. That's subsequently been filled, so there's probably a couple, 18 inches or a couple feet of sediment that's accumulated already within the past 6 months within that area. So this area in through here, historically, has got a significant amount of sediment accumulation. So there was a concern about the wetland boundary. There is material that's getting washed in there. Every time it rains, you get a heavy rain, it washes through there. So we'd assume that Conservation Commission would reach out to DPW to see if this could resolve that issue. But again, I'd be happy to answer questions. I think that's a pretty good summary of where we stand at this point. I know the Commission didn't want to do a site visit I think last week. So I'm not sure what if I need to meet with your conservation agent to look at this area again, or if it's something that can be handled between conservation and DPW to resolve that issue.
Okay. Becky?
Sure. So just for the record, abutter notifications and the legal advertisement have been received for the public hearing.
Okay.
And then, we've got the DEP file number with no comments. Scott kind of went over, but this was previously filed for a different applicant who did walk away. At the time, the commission did ask for additional information in the form of looking at the wetland delineation. They did ask for the proposed driveway to have something underneath that, a pipe or something to allow flow along the side of the road. And then you did also ask for the limit of work to be tightened in the front by that A-series wetland, which would be the limit of work by the proposed driveway, and where the house is, there was some vegetation over there. It appeared that it could be pulled back trees that the commission was looking to have retained in that area. So, right, in regards to the wetland delineation out there, there was the question, it was originally filed in the winter. We kind of went back out, looked at it. There's a lot of sediment that is in that area. We did go out and look at that together previously. It looks like there's a lot of sediment that's filled in that area from washout on the road. And at that time, I did have communications with DPW and some of the people that are associated with the private road up there that might have some influence in that sediment washing down at the time. So there was some work to address those issues. But it would appear that there is additional hydric soil wetland in that area when we looked at it, that I would recommend is looked at a little bit more, so that way we can make sure we have the correct wetland line out there. And then also too, as far as with the plan, a couple of things that should be modified on there. I wasn't sure. One, it still has the previous applicant's name on there, so that should be revised and changed, so it's the current applicant. And then also too, it showed the proposed property line change there. And it wasn't clear if that was still, originally it was work on 2 properties. It was 91 Clark and 97. It sounds like, right, Scott mentioned that it's already been recorded, so the plan should be revised to show that it's not a proposed property line anymore, that's the property line.
And our intent was to make those revisions. It was just a matter of, there's no sense of making the revisions, submitting them to you 2 weeks ago, and then coming back and having more revisions. So I figured, kind of explain the project. We combine any comments that the commission has. We can make those revisions and then come back at the next meeting. And presumably, if the commission finds it acceptable, we could get an approval.
So my recommendation at this time would be, asking about those project revisions that you asked for, or an alternative analysis of why they can't be done, the flow under the driveway and the tightening of the limit of work. And then also, I think that it's important because it does appear that there is additional hydric soil underneath there, that the wetland, that the soils are looked at more to get that accurate delineation out there.
David?
I have 2 or 3. First of all, Becky, I assume because we've already had discussions with the DPW that this is not a private road.
Clark Road is not a private road.
It is?
It's not.
Not?
It's not.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious, for example, have you taken any kind of measurements to find out what the water table level is?
There was soil sampling for the septic system, and then, not really sampling for, water table, but as we're doing the delineation, we're looking at soils.
So what'd you come up with?
What portion of the site?
Depth?
Yeah, but where, David?
Where on the site?
Let's say close to the front of the house.
Yeah,
Right there.
I guess I would say the nearest soil test pits are within that, deep hole tests are within that proposed septic system. I do know they did some sampling down in this vicinity, and groundwater was very high, so they moved and did additional perk tests up here.
So is it going to be a standard foundation on this house?
Yes. Yep.
And there's no concern about the water table?
That's much higher. That's, the wetland boundary, the nearest wetland boundary is at elevation 756. And the top of concrete's 764 now.
So if the concrete's at 754 and the water table's at 756, we got 2 feet of water coming into the basement before you put the basement in.
No, that's not correct. 750.
That's how my numbers work.
764. So there's 8.5 feet of separation between the foundation of this house and the nearest wetland. And if you look, there's an existing foundation there, and it's substantially higher. It slopes off significantly down to this well.
Is that foundation going to be removed?
Yes, it's an old stone foundation, so they'd have to remove that.
Okay. There is no attempt to move the house completely out of the 100-foot buffer zone?
I could have the engineer look into that.
I don't understand on a plot that has more than 1 acre, why you have to encroach on a 100-foot buffer zone. That puzzles me.
Access has to go through the buffer zone. So here's the 100-foot buffer here. So the only way to get into the site has to be through that 100-foot buffer zone.
Yeah.
It's possible that this may be able to be shifted slightly.
Slightly like enough to get it out of the 100?
We'd have to look, because you've got to have a separation between the foundation and the septic tank, and then the septic tank to the leach field. I can ask the engineer to look into it.
I think it would be worth looking into, yes.
And kind of the intent was to overlay the house over where you've got the existing foundation. So there used to be a house there at one point.
I also guess I'm sort of at a loss as to why a new property owner would be willing to kick the can down the road relative to sediment running into a lake in which they want to participate. There's no attempt to do any kind of diversion of the flowage that's coming off of Clark Road and going into the lake. You said you expect us to talk to DPW.
Well, I think DPW made some attempts, and there was some discussion, I think, between the conservation agency.
But I'm talking about the owner. The owner is not, in this construction phase, not going to do anything at all in order to try to dissuade some of the silt that is flowing into that lake.
Well, I think the problem is it's coming from up gradient and discharging on his property. I don't think I think he's willing to have a conversation with the Conservation Commission or DPW to come up with a resolution. But because it's a town road, the DPW's already made some efforts to do something.
Again, there's a fair amount,
issue.
there's a fair amount of acreage, and it would be conceivable to have either a water garden or some other apparatus in order to delay the water prior to entering into the lake again, so that the silt has a place to go other than into the lake. And you did indicate that it has a lot of acreage.
Agreed, he's got 10 acres. Although if the Conservation Commission is trying to pull this wetland boundary up to that edge of the discharge culvert, there's not going to be any room to be able to even do any stormwater improvements at that location. So I think it's got to be a cooperative effort between the property owner, the Conservation Commission.
I think we should have some discussions prior to agreeing on the final plan.
We're here. Welcome the discussions.
I didn't hear your suggestion about mitigation of the silt.
I think it's going to be stopped at the source is one thing. As we said, DPW excavated a large, basin and placed riprap in it, and it's completely full. So it's, like I said, I think it's going to be a cooperative effort between potentially the property owner and DPW to come up with a solution. But I don't think the property owner should be responsible for the amount of sediment that's coming from off-site.
No, I don't think so either, but I think that a creative way of being able to attack this would be to have the property owner agree to have another one of those sediment basins put somewhere on their 10 acres in order to be able to accumulate more of the silt so that it stays on the ground instead of going into the water.
And I think he's willing to have a conversation, but I think that's going to be, it's a DPW issue. There's going to be, to do something significant anywhere other than here would require, a significant cost and pipe thing to install a stormwater base.
I'm done, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Stephen? Scott, what's the significance of the green, I guess, hatched area? Is that
This,
no,
this,
Where the house is.
There you go, yeah.
Shading.
Is that the limit of work inside the 100-foot, or?
Inside the buffer zone, yes.
Okay.
So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Becky, but you asked for this to be pulled back a little bit.
I think that's what the commission was
That's-
previously looking for, that kind of whole area,
Yeah,
why that couldn't be shifted.
Right,
we can certainly look into that.
because it looks like you have grading and clearing that goes into the 50-foot, right?
Yeah, here's the 50-foot right here. So it's just like this little sliver.
Okay.
But we can certainly pull this erosion control barrier back in through here and probably pull it back in through here and then extend it.
All right, I agree with Becky's comments about the, just confirming the wetland line on that portion that's close to the road, right?
Roy?
The other thing I have is how much of the house footprint is in the 100-foot buffer?
That's probably less than 10%.
In the 100?
Yeah, this is the 100 here.
Okay.
So this portion of the house is completely outside, so it's just a matter of this. This corner here, and then there's a deck.
And that's a portion they agreed to look at pulling back.
And that corner is existing? It's an existing foundation?
Yeah, there's an existing foundation. If you look, it's overlaid. So there's an existing foundation, goes into the buffer zone through here, wraps down as a stone wall.
But that's an expansion into the 100-foot from the existing foundation?
Yes.
Okay.
And the existing foundation, you said, is coming out.
Yeah, they've got to remove it. It's an old, stone foundation.
So there is no reason to put a new foundation inside the 100-foot buffer zone.
We'll certainly look at seeing if we can shift that around.
Eric?
No, I think I agree with Becky's comments, and I just wanted to address one thing that Scott said. It's not that we were unwilling, Scott, to come out and do a site visit. We had very specific things that we wanted looked at when this project came in front of us before, and none of them had been addressed at the time. So there really wasn't any motivation for us to go out and look at a project that we had already put notes in on, and I realize it's a different applicant, but essentially we're looking at the same plan. So that was why.
Same engineer.
Same engineer. So my thoughts was, I'm not going to waste my time going out and looking at something when none of the notes that we had provided before had even been addressed. That said, if we're willing to address those things, I think it would be worthwhile for us to go out for a site visit, maybe even in cooperation with Butch Jackson or somebody from the DEP to look at some of the items that we're talking about. So
My apologies, I didn't intend to say that the commission was unwilling. It was my assumption that you had done a site walk before, so it just wasn't worth going out and doing another site visit.
Yeah, no, I think we want to get on the property, but we also want our comments from before at least acknowledged and addressed, and then we can start to work through some of the stuff.
Agreed, because I was kind of left the scene long before I think those comments ended up happening with the previous applicant, because he was just essentially, I think the commission ended up just denying it, because none of the comments were addressed.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he told us to deny it, basically. And he got to a point where he was walking away.
Right.
But at that time, we had not agreed on delineation. The pool that you're talking about, that DEP had recently dug, not DEP, but
DPW.
had recently dug on the site. So, I mean, those problems still exist, so I think you need to give us a plan that you think we, could deal with, and we'll come out and take a site visit.
Okay. I think the first step would be, we got to hash out, the wetland boundaries, so if there's any way we could meet on site next week.
Well, we did go out there and look at it before together, and remember, we dug down through the sediment and found the hydric soils down there. So I think we just that's got to get continued and look at where hydric soils are there.
I think we got to agree on, we got to look, maybe it's worthwhile for me to go out there an hour before you come, look at it, and then the two of us go over it and come to some conclusion.
If you want to do it for the next scheduled site visit, that might be productive. If you want to do it next week anyways, we have site
For
visits on
delineation
Tuesday.
only?
well, to look at that specific area.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it, but that's all we'll get is a delineation, if he doesn't, cite a house and,
Yeah, because there's no
Right, I
sense of.
think they're gonna
there's
work
No
on-
sense of revising plans until we resolve all this.
all right.
So that's what my suggestion was, to get your agent out there to look at this. Come
All right,
back.
so you're interested in a continuation?
Yeah, if we can,
And we can coordinate when a site visit will be. So I just want to add too, with the last applicant, we were talking about, when we were out there with him before, about, the sediment that's accumulated in that wetland over time, and that's when I did start to, DPW had already dug that basin over there before we ever went to that property when the NOI was filed. So we did start to have some conversations with him, or at least I did, about, restoration and options of that. Pulling the sediment out, there's a lot of Japanese knotweed out there, so that might be something that would be productive to continue with the next, this new property owner is, working collectively to address that issue over there, so.
Maybe you weren't at the last site visit that we had with him.
I was not, no.
Yeah.
But he did not want the house up. I mean, he did not want the house back. He wanted it up front where you have it now. And he also had a list of trees that he wanted to cut that were in and around the wetland. So if you have plans to cut trees, you might want to mark them too.
Okay.
That way we
I
don't.
think unless it's, I'll talk to the applicant again.
There's a
It's my
couple of huge
understanding that-
trees there.
And I think those are close enough to the wetland that are outside the limit of work.
Yeah, I think somewhere
I think
close to
that-
that old access
Well,
road.
at any rate, you can figure that out. I'm just saying that was something that he was saying. And so he was deciding as a builder whether he wanted, it was his house that he was building, and he decided that he did not want to do it.
Right.
So, Okay. Continuation?
Oh, we need to do public.
Yep.
Anyone in the
Yep.
public that would like to speak in regards to the notice of intent? Go on the public line. Is there anyone on the public line who would like to speak in regards to the notice of intent for 91 Clark Road? There's nobody on the public line. As far as a continuation date, we do have a 7-day deadline for new information for our next meeting. So right now, our meetings are every 2 weeks. If you think you can have something in by next Tuesday, otherwise I would recommend we continue out into the following meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah, which would be November 16th.
I think let's go with the 16th. I don't think we're going to be able to turn around plans.
Okay.
All right?
And I don't want to waste anybody's time, so.
All right? All in favor?
David Barnacle in
Continuation,
favor.
David.
Stephen Chester in favor?
Roy Bishop in favor?
Ed Gooder in favor?
Eric Gaspar in favor.
Okay, great. Unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Hey, well, we're almost at 6:30. We're at 180 Breakneck and 16 Crossroad, but before we do that,
You skipped
Meredith, are you going to give us a late drawdown summary on?
Number
Okay.
two.
Ed, we got to go
Number
back to
two.
number 2.
Number 2, did I miss? Oh, okay, great. Let me go back. Up, bottom of the page, 22 Birch Street. Thank you. Replacement of the shoreline wall.
Oh, did I?
Sorry about that, you must have said,
Okay.
holy mackerel.
Mike Tebow, Landscape Evolution.
Yep, do you have a
You
number?
may know me.
Beck?
Oh, I lost my, oh, that's why. Hold on, I'm just trying to multitask here.
There we go.
Yeah, actually, we did. Yesterday, early evening, DEP did issue a file number. It's 300-1114.
Mike, it's your lucky day.
Yeah, right?
Right.
All right, so I'm here representing Jeff and Patricia Burdick at 22 Birch Street, and this lakeside property has a sort of a cobble retaining wall on the shoreline. It's quite a collection of rocks. It's very deep, goes, I know Rebecca and Eric had come out to see it last week, and the problem is it's very unstable. They're small pieces, and with the wave action, it's has been a problem, I guess with the high water this year and the waves. Jeff has experienced, he says there's a lot of erosion that's happening. Sort of seems like the banking's sort of mushrooming out. And we're for an 80-foot-long section, where it's actually 2.5 to 3 feet tall, and we like to use larger stones for much of it, like a 2.5 to 3 foot diameter stone, and then the upper portion would be sloped and planted, and the idea is just greater stability and to reduce the erosion. I don't know, I think after we talk about the wall, there's some talk about plantings, and on the site visit, there's a birch tree that's kind of at question. It's at the end of its life. It's leaning hard towards the lake, and maybe that'll be a second discussion, but they'd like to take that out and replace it with a new birch tree or something else. So that's what's being asked. And at the top of the wall, I mentioned it would be a little sloped, the last foot, and then planted. Really talking about like a 3 to 4 foot deep planting area, whereas right now the lawn is right up to the wall. There's also a lot of extra stone in the water. It looks like it's just been added to over years. Quite a collection. It's kind of crazy deep. So we're looking to reel that in. It would still be sloped back, but more stable, and doesn't need to be that many stones in the water. So that's what I have.
I know, usually I go first, so I gotta
Right?
save you some of that, but.
There you go. You're quicker, too.
We threw them off.
Yeah, so just to add to that, so we did receive that DEP file number. They had no comments, and just for the record, we do have the proof of legal ad and abutter notifications for the public hearing as well. One comment had it in the detailed agenda. It is a great pond, so the applicant is required to check if there's a Chapter 91 license requirement there, separate from our permitting. I think Mike went over what the wall is now. So what we're looking at for resource area here, we have bank impact, bordering land subject to flooding, and then obviously we're working in the buffer zone here for jurisdiction. We did go out, we saw that cobble wall. It does, look pretty wide. Pulling it back and doing the varied stone-sized wall there, will increase some of that land underwater there. So I see that as an improvement. Considering the bank is currently this cobble wall, I don't see that as significant for wildlife habitat, and therefore, kind of replacing it with this nature will be kind of similar. So I don't see that it's a trigger for wildlife habitat assessment for this project. And then also at the top of the wall, they are going to take out some of that lawn that he mentioned and put a nice vegetated buffer in there with some native plantings, which will help with site runoff, infiltration, and, nutrient, pulling up some of those nutrients. So I see that as improvement as well. We did discuss that birch tree.
Right.
It definitely is leaning, and it's right up against the wall, so when they do that replacement there, it appears that it'll probably come out. Part of the reason maybe it's leaning is because there is other trees in that area with a canopy, so it might be searching for that sunlight. So we did talk about replacements, so the commission can kind of give some input, what they want for replacements, 1 or 2. I'd recommend it gets shifted over maybe on the other side of the dock a little bit, so that way it's not fighting whatever it's there with those other trees, and add some more canopy to the site. So maybe next to the dock on either side would be a good location for that, to give some canopy where there isn't. So when I had done the detailed agenda, we didn't have the DEP file number, but at this time, I would recommend that you could move forward with voting on this project, and that you could approve it. I'd recommend that you decide what you, give some feedback, and you can decide what you want for the replacement for that birch tree, and I can add that in as a condition in the permit. And then also, I would just add for conditions, we'd have our standard conditions. Shoreline work is to be performed in dry conditions during lake drawdown. If working in dry conditions is not possible, then a plan must be developed to protect resource areas during work. such plan would be provided to the Conservation Department for prior review and approval. And we've worked on, doing different things on other sites on South Pond before, so we can work on that plan together. Toe of the boulders must end at the existing toe of slope and should be pulled back where possible. And the wall will have to conform to existing conditions. The height would be the same, which he's proposing anyways. One of the last projects that we had done, we had talked about adding some extra conditions in there to ensure those as-built conditions. So I'd recommend that. We have before and after site photos with the stakes in there, as we had discussed, and then an as-built plan to demonstrate no net fill and as-built elevations. And I just also add, it's a general condition we always have, that applicants required to receive all of the permits, but specifically to inquire about Chapter 91 approval. And then also, I thought that it's useful, sometimes we have these done, and the contractor does some of the work, and the applicant later will do the plantings, that we need to get the timing of the plantings. We've discussed this with trees, tree permits, to try to get those to coincide as much as possible. Obviously, the work when the wall comes out is done during lake drawdown, so we're past the growing season typically. So I would just say, plantings must coincide with wall work. If it's not an appropriate season, then plantings must be installed by, I just said May 31st of the next year. You can decide if that date's appropriate, or you think that it could be pulled back a little bit too. Just a recommendation.
Yeah. Mr. B?
Gentle questions.
Yep.
Becky, have you explained to him about the markings on the beach, on the shore?
I think, were you on the call last time when we were talking about that for the project on Westwood?
Yeah,
was Lenny.
not sure.
Oh, yeah. We're adding a condition in that permit, and yeah, we can discuss that.
Okay.
Just to get that baseline, and then.
Right.
It's a simple process, but it gives us some clarity.
Right.
Secondly, are you going to stump, or are you going to take out the entire root system of the failing birch trees?
Well, it's one very small tree, so it certainly wouldn't take much for it to come out, quite honestly. I would go either way on it, but I mean, it probably would make sense to take it out, because otherwise it's just it's gonna collapse there, so. But if it's just an issue in terms of erosion control, I don't think it really is, but, if the board feels it is, then it could be left, but this does not.
It's not that large, Dave,
No.
and I think it's within where you might be putting your crushed stone for the wall
Yeah.
anyways, so I think they're gonna be working in that area anyways.
So you wouldn't have to take the roots out of the ground and further disturb the top surface of the ground. You could just grind the stump. Is that what you're saying?
Well, but that's where the plantings are gonna go anyways too, so I think they're gonna be working and disturbing that whole area temporarily
Okay.
anyways.
And as a suggestion, regardless of where you decide to put them, you might want to think of either of two, either a red maple, which is really similar to the other trees located on the lake,
Right.
or river birch. But please don't put up a singular river birch.
Okay.
Always put up more than one,
Yeah,
because if it happens that it starts leaning like its partner, the white birch did,
right,
you can belt it.
yeah,
And it gives you 3 seasons.
sure. Yep. Yeah, I think we're probably somewhat flexible on the type of tree. But I mean, honestly, I know the board would prefer one be out in the open area, but, the property owner's really asking that they would be, they're open to several trees being added, but not to the middle of the property. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it still could be added near the dock where the existing ones are, maybe just pushed a little closer.
Yeah,
you know.
that's doable. And, they were fine with several trees being planted to replace that birch tree.
Eric?
Steve?
You're gonna?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so is that different than what Jeff, you and Becky and I had talked about on site? Because we had talked about just on the other side of the dock, and it seemed like he was amenable to that, which, and we're not talking,
Right.
completely across. So is that a change from what we discussed?
Yeah, not in the middle of it. I think there was a discussion with the rest of the family. that wasn't on board.
I certainly understand, yes. So when you say the middle, though,
Yeah, so the other
would
side of the
something
dock.
to the right of the dock,
Yeah.
fairly close, be okay,
Right.
but not all the way kind of in the middle of that land.
Correct.
If it's next to the dock, to the right of it,
Yeah,
that would be okay to the applicant.
right.
Okay, I mean, it's better than what we have, so, okay. All right, I have no other questions. It seemed like a reasonable ask.
Right.
And it seems like they're willing to work with us, maybe not as far as we would want to go. with that.
Basically,
I
yeah.
think I'd be okay with that.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Roy? Or Steve?
I agree with Becky's comments, and, I like that this is an improvement over the existing conditions, so it's good.
Well, I disagree. First of all, if a birch is leaning into the water, it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. And I don't remember the stump on this one.
Yeah.
But you could just cut it, and you could have a new clump in
This is at the late stage of life.
What?
It's a late stage of life. It's not a tree
Well,
that's going to put
I-
out a lot, but.
I would think that we would want to have at least 2 new clumps of river birch on the edge, and at least one large tree. And not that I'm trying to block the vista, but putting everything on the side doesn't help either.
Yeah.
That would be my,
I don't think there's bargaining on that.
What?
I can't bargain on that myself.
Yeah.
I can't.
Well, then you'll have to take a rejection then, won't you, and go back, because
Yeah.
I'd like to see.
Did you see the picture of the birch that we're talking about, question?
Yeah,
It's not much
yeah.
of a,
Yeah, no, I know.
it's not providing much canopy.
Everything's relative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, I don't know how the rest of the committee feels, but denudering the front and putting what they have here, low bush blueberries in the corner, and a quaking aspen.
Yeah, they're agreeable to other trees, whether a red maple or a birch tree. And they're also very open to additional, more than one tree. Just, I can't myself say that it's okay with them to put them out in the other side.
Out where
of the
they'd
dock.
create shade, you mean?
I'm the contractor.
I know.
Don't beat me up about
Bring
it.
the applicant with you the next time.
I don't.
I don't know, maybe the rest of the committee doesn't agree with me.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, the low bush blueberry, there's no way on God's green earth I would ever agree to. High bush blueberry is something that's common. The low bush blueberry belongs up in Maine.
okay,
No, we have some, but they're all on hills and they're wide open. They don't have any tree cover.
yep,
It's not going to succeed, and we don't want to plant plants that are not going to succeed.
we can amend that to high bush blueberry, no problem.
Stephen, what do you think?
I think, if we can get a maple and a clump of river birch, that seems like a good compromise. I'm not going to force them to put it in the middle of the yard, I guess, if they're willing to do it. Are they willing to do it next to the dock, or did we establish that they're not willing to do that? They're only willing to do it at the edge?
I don't know.
Yes, next to the dock, just not the other side of the dock, so the middle of the property.
So that's a yes to that?
Yes.
Okay, all right. You hear that, Becky?
Yep.
Okay. Any further discussion on it? Roy, what do you think?
I agree with Steve's comments.
Yeah.
And Eric's.
I can go with that.
I'm just confused. When when I say to the right of the dock, it's
Okay,
towards
so we're looking
the
at the plan
open.
right up here. I'm talking to the left.
he's taking the tight.
Okay,
No,
I said the right.
Okay.
3
Right.
times. So, all right, because, all right. I mean, I would prefer something that hugs the dock to the right personally. Because, that's not going to really hurt the vista.
Right.
Do you guys want the pictures up or no?
We have site
What?
photos.
Do you want the pictures up of the site?
Sure. No, we can have this argument right there. I mean, where are you talking? You're talking to the right of the dock?
No,
As that plan sits to
Yeah.
the left of the dock.
he's saying to the left of the
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you go with it to the right? I mean, to the left?
I mean, that's where it is right now. So, I mean, if we could put two trees, can you fit a maple and a clump of birch in that section?
I think so, because I'm coming closer to the dock than currently, so I think if I do that, I have room.
All right.
Yeah, with proper
If we get our 2 for 1 and it's not gonna make it any worse, I guess I'm okay with it. It's
but
not-
with proper separation.
Right, yeah, so they can thrive, right, okay,
All right.
all right.
Do I have a motion? Or before we do that, we go to the public?
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak in regards to this notice of intent? Is there anyone on the public line who would like to speak in regards to the notice of intent for 22 Birch Street? There's no one on the line.
All right.
Eric, your motion.
All right. So, I'd like, what is the file number again? Oh, is it on there? Wait a second.
1114.
Yeah.
What is it?
1114.
1114?
Are you
All
closing the
right,
public
so,
hearing?
make a motion to close the public hearing?
Second the motion.
Any discussion? All in favor? David, start down there.
Barnacle in favor.
Stephen Chittister in favor?
Roy Bishop in favor?
Ed Goodwin in favor.
Eric Gaspar in favor, and I'd also like to make a motion that we approve the NOI for 22 Birch Street, DEP file 300-1114, with the agent's notes and with the 2 plantings, 1 maple and a group of river birch to the left of the
Right.
dock with proper spacing.
I'll second that motion.
Discussion? All in favor?
David Barnacle in favor.
Stephen
Okay.
Chittister in favor?
Roy Bishop in favor?
And Ed Goodwin in favor. All right.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Have a good night.
Doo-doo-doo. Well, now. Now I can get up to where I was. Number 3, 180 Breakneck Road, 16 Cross Street, ANRAD, proposed equine center, DEP file number 300. Did you have a number?
Oh, we don't have a file number for this.
No file number at this point in time. All right. Becky, come on up.
So,
Chris, you find your way here all right?
yeah.
He used that GPS he had yesterday. Fantastic.
I get lost? Finds his way everywhere.
So, just before we get started, so I just want to say, we do have proof of legal ad, but in regards to the abutter notifications, so I was checking today the list here, and it looked like a few things were missing, because I know we had like gone by Hull's property and stuff like that, so I went back to the abutters list, and it looks like when you guys asked for the assessors list, they asked for a direct abutter list versus the 200-foot conservation one. So I can give you a copy of this. So as far as the public hearing, we can open the public hearing and discuss it under the Wetlands Protection Act, because it's only for the local bylaw.
Okay.
I would just recommend, having the discussion, continue that hearing, and then we'll have to continue it to the next meeting, and we can open under the bylaw too, and that way they can take action, relative to the hearing at that time. So I'd recommend it just a continuation at this time, and we're just opening under the Wetlands Protection Act. So you just have to have reach back out and get the appropriate list. I think it's about 6 more properties. I'm not sure that would have been included, 5 or 6, depending on if you have to notify the Commonwealth for 84 or not. But I can give you a copy. I asked for that copy for the assessor, so.
We would have ended up continuing.
Right, anyways, yeah, but we'll just have to open under state act and not the local bylaw.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry.
Would you two please sign in with your names and affiliations for the general public, please?
Oh, I think they did when they came in, but they can state them for the beginning of the hearing here.
Yeah, I did not sign in, I will sign
Okay.
in, but my name is.
No, just give us your name.
Yeah, Meredith Avery, I'm the Director of Natural Sciences with VHB.
You have to talk into the mic, please.
Sure.
Not
Meredith,
for us, it's for the people out in television.
oh, that's
land.
right, we're in hybrid mode. Meredith Avery, VHB, Environmental Scientist.
Thank you.
I'm Christopher Wagner, Senior Environmental Scientist with VHB as well.
All right.
All right, so
Yep. I'm
we
gonna-
go before you, right, Becky? We just do a little intro first?
No, you can go ahead and give your presentation.
Okay,
if you like.
terrific. So we're here representing the applicant on 180 and 16 Cross Street for the ANRAD that's in front of the Conservation Commission tonight. We are looking to get confirmation of the wetland lines on 2 parcels that are associated with the future development.
Right.
That future development will be coming before you in a future NOI. But before we develop anything as detailed as an NOI would require, we want to make sure that we do the work of getting confirmation of the wetland lines and looking at the site holistically for existing conditions before we develop any detailed design plans. So it's really the stage we're at with the commission right now, is trying to get confirmation on the wetland lines on these 2 parcels. We had a site visit yesterday where we looked at the parcel and looked at kind of holistically at a high level where the wetlands are placed on the site and general characteristics of the wetlands. We also discussed that there'll be some future wetland delineations that will be associated with other components of a future development, should the future development move forward through all of the other approvals that it needs through the town. But right now, what we want to do is make sure that this core parcel, these 2 parcels along Breakneck Road, are reviewed thoroughly and sort of confirmed that the boundaries are as we've represented them, so that we can then build in the buffer zones that are respective of the bylaws and do the work to actually make sure that our development is going to be in compliance with the bylaw and in compliance with the Wetlands Protection Act. So this is stage 1, and we know we're going to be continued. We're going to go through a process to get these approved. It is a fairly large and complex site, so we have spent a lot of time out there. Chris, in particular, knows the site backwards and forwards, I think we learned yesterday.
No argument here.
All of the secret pathways to get us through the site. And I'll let him do most of the talking, really, because he has the knowledge of the wetlands and can walk you through all of the parcel information and give you a high-level overview of it. So one thing I did want to mention, we had noticed a monitoring well on the site yesterday, and there's some question about what the monitoring well was for. I was told today that that well is actually a town well, and it was put in as part of the landfill to make sure
Right.
if the landfill was moving through the groundwater, they had a way to test it.
Yeah, that's
So-
where I assumed that was.
Yeah, yeah.
But we need to,
We confirmed that yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, we're confirming.
no, get the testing on it, just to.
Yeah, I'm sure, yeah. So anyway, I'll turn it over to Chris, who can walk you through, I think he has the presentation teed up for you all to kind of walk through the wetlands and the jurisdictional determinations.
Mr. Chairman, could we talk about that 80 acres first, because we're not going to talk about it later?
Sure, you can just.
The parcel to
yeah,
the
go ahead and
to the
move that,
east?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a parcel to the east that we are not proposing anything on. I know it's involved in some zoning overlay, but there's no physical changes proposed right now. Should there be anything proposed on that site, we would need to delineate that as well. We did talk a little bit, we were on the site visit, as to whether or not we should get some access to that parcel and delineate some of the wetlands that may be proximate enough to this parcel that would throw a buffer zone onto our parcel, and we would need to make that part of our notice of intent. So we'll be working to make sure that we get those wetlands, anything that would have a buffer onto our property, delineated, as well as some of the wetlands to the north, where we're still getting permissions. There's some wetlands that we want to check out, both along 84 and so parcels to the north, and because there's another process involved with the state on getting access to those sites, it's taking a little bit longer than these 2 parcels. So rather than delay everything for that.
Those town parcels?
There is one town parcel, yeah, that we'll need to get on to the north. Yep. Yeah, as part of the future.
What's the other parcel?
I have a list of parcel names. I don't have them with me. We're trying to figure out which ones we need to get site access for, so I'm working with some of the
Would you let
lawyers.
Becky have a copy of that, just so we know?
Yeah, once we know which ones are definitively the parcels that we need to get on for that access point,
yeah.
we'll provide that to you for sure. But so that will be coming before you as well, and anything along that line that would throw a buffer zone in, we can pick up those as well. So, does that answer the question that you had?
Yes, we had heard rumors about a well being dug out there.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing that has been under consideration, and it's really just kind of under consideration. It's not really part of the project right now. It is a natural heritage polygon, so, obviously, anything that we would do out there would require pretty rigorous review from the state from that aspect. A drawdown of a well would certainly need to be reviewed as far as what it would affect on whatever species are on that parcel.
But it
So-
changes the whole aspect of that piece of property.
Yeah, so for now, we are not proposing, there's nothing formally proposed out there. It's not part of the program, which is why we don't have it mapped out here. If that changes, or if it becomes necessary, obviously, we'd have to come back to you guys, and we'd have to work with the state on anything that's proposed there as well.
Sorry to divert you from the big picture.
No, it's all good stuff, so let me,
That's the even bigger picture. All right, so I have a few slides. As Meredith said, we did a site walk with the two of you yesterday, but for everyone's benefit who hasn't been out to the site, I have some slides of just the general overlay of the wetlands that are present on these two parcels. It's a big area. These two parcels total just under 300 acres. And, excuse me, and then we also, is this yours?
We just colored, that was the overview, and you can turn it if you want. Yeah, you can turn it if you
No,
want
it's
them
actually
to see it.
yours that we did.
Yeah, exactly.
We
Yeah, I was
did
just gonna say, this is,
we highlight all the buffer zones for them with the different colors for all the projects, so that way it just kind of, it's easier to see.
best way to turn it so the commission can see it?
It is,
I mean, I don't need it for my benefit, so.
okay, yeah, I didn't know if we needed it, so we brought it.
For everyone's
so.
benefit, but this is helpful. So this and the slide, we can start advancing through the slides. So sort of this board that's up on the easel and the slide that's up on the screen are essentially showing the same thing, which is the two parcels. On the screen, the parcels are outlined in red. And it basically shows all the wetlands that we delineated on the site. We obviously, for the sake of referring to them, we've numbered them. But they, a lot of them are interconnected, and they form a large wetland complex, basically. The yellow line that's up on the slide is basically very rudimentary at this point, but it's kind of basically a dividing line, a drainage divide on the site. So everything that's sort of north of that yellow line basically drains north into those two large ponds, and then eventually into Hammond Brook and the Hammond Brook Reservoir to the north.
Did you say it correctly?
I know,
I would have thought this was higher.
Sorry?
I would have thought the line was higher.
Oh, the yellow line was closer towards
Yeah.
the Chestnut property? Yeah.
Where it curves up and then heads off to
You
the
just
west,
use the topo
it may
to
be-
do that, the
yeah,
elevation?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And, I sort of initially vetted it with our site designer, but it's it's basically just a rudimentary line. The actual divide may be higher, but in terms of the wetlands that are divided up, the wetlands that are north of that line all flow to the north.
Oh, okay.
The wetlands that are to the south of that line all flow to the south. And then there is another stream, there is a perennial stream that's in the southwest corner, which we'll talk about in just a second. Just clipping that southwest corner of the site, that's Leadmine Brook, which comes from the west, from the other side of 84, and flows just across that southwest corner of the site. But it does obviously throw, it's a perennial stream, so it throws riverfront area onto that portion of the site. So that's a general overview of the site. The rest of these slides are basically just going to take you sort of very generally through these wetlands. And I've arranged them basically in such a way to just sort of take you through the way that they flow on the site. So we'll address the northern half of the west site first, and then the southern half of the site.
Before you leave that,
Sure.
Chris, have you got the pointer?
Yep. You have pointers over there, too.
I was going to ask if those
Yeah.
are pointers, yeah.
She always
So we
gives me
can
the
all
one that
point at the
doesn't
same
work.
I
time.
have different colors.
Amenities.
I saw one,
big one.
The kitty version.
no, mine
I have
doesn't
the
work
only
either.
working one.
Oh, Chris is in control, he's got the.
Either one of those work?
His works,
Yes.
yeah.
No, but the
Temperamental.
next site visit, we had talked about,
Yep.
would start in this area here and go up
Go up the hill,
the side here, which we pretty much missed all of
yeah,
Yep.
the trip.
yep.
Which made sense, so.
Yeah, it does take a little more to get into that site, because
And you have more flagging to do up here?
That's right, yeah, to the north of the red parcel, and then in between 84, the two barrels at 84.
You're gonna have to pack a lunch for that one, they said.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, that one's going to be a little more rugged.
get Chris with us, it can be done in an hour.
Yeah. As long as he doesn't forget his iPad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's all right, that's fine. So the site is undeveloped. Most of the site is wooded. Most of these wetlands are wooded. There is sort of a nice combination, actually, of palustrid forested wetlands with some scrub shrub wetlands, and then also some emergent wetlands, although not quite as many as the forested wetlands, but some areas around the two large ponds, for example. And then the only real area of site disturbance that's probably worth pointing out, this is great having this pointer, would be sort of this area, which is the area of the existing sand and gravel operation, the Chestla operation. So, okay, we can start advancing through. So these are just going to include basically some pictures for you with the general site in the background. So as you can see, some of these, so this is Wetland 5, which is this first large wetland here. Again, everything on this side of the line flows to the north. So Wetland 5 will flow into Wetland 4, which is the first large pond, and then into Wetland 2, which is the other large pond to the north, and then into this Hammond Brook complex. So that'll sort of be the general, the gist. So you can see Wetland 5 does have some open water areas. It's got some scrub shrub areas as well, and then a forested wetland fringe. Next slide. And then, again, moving north, these are the two large ponds. This one down here is Wetland 4. This one here is Wetland 2. They're these two large blue open water bodies. This photo here is, resolution on this screen is a little low, but this is sort of the single connecting feature between them. It's a sort of this intermittent flow. When the water level in Wetland 4, in the southern pond, drops, even probably 6 inches to a foot, this would have no flow. There's very, there's very little. This is a very narrow channel that connects them. Similarly, next slide. There is a connection between Wetland 2 that flows into Wetland 1, which is this large complex of wetlands that begins the Hammond Brook course. And the connection between Wetland 2 and Wetland 1 is, again, this very narrow channel that we looked at yesterday that was at that very northwest corner of the North Pond that flows through the ditch and then across this access road that leads to the reservoir, or to the landfill to the north.
It's a lot of water in that picture, a lot more than when we were out there yesterday.
Yeah, well, when it hits the road, it
wider.
basically fans out.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously there's no channel for it to incise. This channel here is the larger channel that exists between the two sort of much larger flooded areas on either side of it at the beginning of Hammond Brook. So again, as we mentioned yesterday, this channel has directional flow within it. The two flooded areas on either side of it, as you can see, do not. But there is directional flow that's occurring within that channel.
Excuse me, is it elevation that's causing the northerly flow?
Yes, it's definitely a natural gradient that's directing all that water to the north. So, okay, next slide. And then aside from those wetlands that we just sort of walked through, which was 5 to 4 to 2 to 1, there are a number of smaller wetlands on site. So wetlands 6 and 9 are these small wetlands on the side of this hill slope, and then just to the south of Wetland 5. They are connected. They're both BVW. Wetland 9 is connected, again, by a small intermittent channel to Wetland 5, but water flows out of that in a natural gradient. And then Wetland 6 is itself, the system is isolated, but it's an area of wetland, and it has a stream flowing out of it that then dissipates into the sandy soil that's present on that hill slope. So although the system is isolated, we've characterized it as BVW because it has a stream flowing out of it. And as we talked about yesterday, it would be jurisdictional under the bylaw in any case, so we've included that. Next slide. And then there are a few other isolated areas this is all on the north side of that yellow line. So Wetland 3 is an isolated area, somewhat disturbed, but it has some shrub characteristics in it as well, to the north of that Wetland 4, which is that southern pond. And then Wetlands 7 and 8 are these two isolated features that are, again, up towards the top of that slope. On the east side of the site is the dirt road that is Old Breakneck Road that runs down the side of the site. And these two wetlands are just downslope of that road. We walked by them yesterday.
Were those the stinky ones?
No, the stinky ones were in the road.
Oh.
Yeah. Those are a little more natural, as you can see down here. So that's everything on the north side of that line. Moving forward, next slide, we basically come down to the south side of the line. And on the south side of the line, we have these wetland systems, and they, I guess you could say, operate a little more independently than what's going on the north side. And by that I mean, so this is wetland 12 on the right-hand side, wetland 14 in the middle, wetland 15 on the left. And all three of them basically flow independently of one another, but they all flow to the south and eventually collect in the Lead Mine Brook Reservoir, which is cut off on this picture, but it's to the south here, over the state line in Connecticut.
And into Mashpog?
Yes.
Into Mashpog Lake?
That's right, yes, eventually to Mashpog, yeah. Yep. So Wetland 12, and I should also, we can basically all group all three of these large wetland complexes as forested wetlands, as you can see here. There's a lot of saturated areas, a lot of pit and mound topography in a lot of these areas. And the wetlands 12 and 15 in particular, there'll be a slide on this later on, but they have several vernal pools in them that we identified during our delineation. I should say that we delineated all of these wetland resources basically starting in early May of this year, through the month of May and into June. But basically all of these vernal pool areas were identified early on in the process while, as we all know, it was a pretty wet season, so there was a lot of water to identify areas, and so we identified those vernal pools based on, I'm giving away all the information on this later slide, but all these vernal pools were identified basically on their capacity to hold water for at least 2 continuous months, and they all had evidence of breeding amphibians in them, so there were egg masses present in all of the areas that we identified. So, next slide. This would just be wetland 14, which again is this long finger-like wetland. Again, water collects in the north and basically just flows down a very gentle gradient to the south and eventually off the south of the property. There are a couple of very small sort of stream channels that will, ephemeral channels that appear and then disappear within the center of this wetland system, but no long contiguous stream channel in the center of it. By contrast, next slide, wetland 15, you can see we did delineate an intermittent stream channel that does sort of flow down the eastern side of this wetland, and again, off-site, sort of connects into wetland 14 at the bottom and then flows off-site. The rest of this wetland is basically a forested wetland, but it, again, has a few vernal pool areas in it, areas of standing water with evidence of egg masses and breeding amphibian activity within it. Next slide. And we have wetland 17, which again, this is Lead Mine Brook, which I mentioned. This is what flows across the southwestern corner of the site. You can see this is a broad perennial stream, ranging anywhere from 15 to 25 feet, depending on the, you know, the shape of the stream is a meandering stream that comes out of a culvert on the east side of 84, cuts across that southwest corner of the site, and then flows off-site.
As it comes from lead mine, it's nowhere near that big, but it is, and it flows really fast. So it's really a nice stream.
Yeah.
This is more where it's coming down to be congested to flow,
Yeah,
you know, to go towards Holland, right?
correct.
Yeah. That comes around and goes into the Quinneball.
Yes.
Yeah.
Next slide. And then again, as with the north side, there are a few isolated areas. Wetland 10 is, you know, an isolated basin that it had basically at the bottom of a hill slope on all sides. It's collected quite a bit of muck in the bottom. It did not have any vernal pool activity within it. And then Wetland 11, I just want to make sure I have them right. Yeah, Wetland 11 and 13 oh yeah, that's right. Wetland 11 is over on the eastern side, Wetland 13 is on the southern side. And then Wetland 16, again, is an isolated area just to the north of Wetland 15. Did not connect through here. There is this little finger-like projection went up there, but searching through, they did not connect. But again, Wetland 16 by itself is still jurisdictional under the bylaw. So, and then I think the next slide is the one I spoiled already, talking about the vernal pools. So again, predominantly located clusters within this complex that is Wetland 12, and within this complex that is Wetland 15. Those were the sort of the main areas of activity that we found. But there were a couple other small isolated areas that we feel would qualify because they were large enough to hold water, to have that hydro period required for the ag masses to develop.
Did you see wood turtle activity while you were up there?
No, we didn't. We didn't
Didn't
see
at all, huh?
any turtle activity.
Yeah, because that sandy soil is ideal for them.
Yeah, and we did sort of take a look around in that area, but didn't observe anything. Next slide, I think, is just a summary of what we talked about. So, and this is also recapitulated, Becky, in your summary on the agenda. We have basically 17 wetlands that we went through, 10 areas of BVW, 7 areas that would qualify as ILSF under the Wetlands Protection Act, 2 would be jurisdictional under the bylaw only, but all 7 of them would be jurisdictional under the bylaw as well. So 17 wetlands that we're talking about. 2 of them were the large freshwater ponds, and there is one area of bordering land subject to flooding, and that's associated with Lead Mine Brook in the southwest corner.
Right.
There's a small area of floodplain associated with that. And then, of course, the vernal pool areas. So
Can
that's
you
everything.
clarify riverfront is being requested?
Yes, and we do want to clarify that we are requesting confirmation of all the jurisdictional resource areas on site, which would include mean annual high water and the riverfront area associated with that. So we'll need to clarify that if you need us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Application.
Yeah, that was just one of my comments of reviewing the ANRAD, that it just didn't list riverfront area
Right.
or mean annual high water line.
Right.
Right.
And then also, too, we should independently list vernal pool habitat with
Right.
the mean annual high water line for the pools that you delineated out there, too.
Yes.
Just make sure we have that on the
form.
form.
Right.
And then make sure on the plans, too, add riverfront area, mean annual high water line. I think the legend did have that separate from bank on there, so.
Yeah, that should be on there.
Yeah, so we need to clarify that. Obviously, for my comments, some things we already talked about a little bit, but at this point, obviously a continuation, like we discussed already.
Right.
But that due to the size and nature of the site, that obviously a peer review would be recommended to go out.
Yeah.
Look at everything, confirm everything that they presented to the board at this time. So, right, we just talked about the ANRAD and the clarification, so I'd expect the revised form to come in.
Yep.
with revised plans that have that information. And I would just ask too, with the legend on the plan, to go through and make sure that the legend lines up with what's being shown for like the buffer zone markings and things like that. There were some other lines, especially where Lead Mine Brook is, there were some other lines on there that weren't shown what the lines were for. I just wasn't sure what those were. We can talk about that afterwards a little bit too, just to get that clarified on there. But right, riverfront area obviously is important to be shown on there, as well as the vernal pool habitat. Those can have significant impacts on a project which is different than buffer zone. So those really need to be shown on there. One thing that was already talked about that we talked about on site was, right, there's off-site wetlands that could project a buffer zone. You know, if they're just asking specifically for resource areas on this site, that's okay, but we would have to note that in an ORAD that there could be something off-site that would project that, and any future project that comes in, they'd have to additionally look at that.
Right.
You know, what we already talked about as well was the off-site properties. Really important that, right, at that point in time, that we look at resource area delineations for those. That would affect the totality of the project that's proposed too. So we've talked about that on site, and you already mentioned that earlier too. One other thing you mentioned too was the natural heritage mapping on the 181 Breakneck. It does look like it does cut onto the old Breakneck Road too. So I would recommend, if you have anything that is proposed within their polygon, that you have early coordination with them, just to make sure, because they do have those anti-segmentation provisions in their regulations. So they may or may not want to see more than just what's proposed there. So I would just highly recommend talking to them early on about that. So I think we covered everything that, you know, I had already written on here. So those are the comments that I have at this time. But again, continue, peer review for the
David?
project.
Just one. On the slide before this, Chris, you talked about one of these streams being a cold water stream.
I did?
You mentioned that it was cold water.
I don't think I did. I don't recall doing that.
Yeah.
I'm
I don't either, yeah.
Okay? And nobody else remembers it?
I didn't hear it.
Figment of my imagination.
I would jump right up if I.
But Dave, we've talked about Lead Mine Brook for a different project, and maybe that's what you're,
It could be.
another time. Yeah, yeah.
Because we all tested the water for hammered blood, right?
We did.
It didn't feel warm.
It felt
Put our
warm.
hands in there and we tested.
Not
I
cold.
was going to be able to stand up and say something if it was cold water. Go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, I don't have any questions at this time.
Eric?
No, it's a nice hike with you guys.
Something for Becky is, that's the Mass Connecticut border down there. Is there any
Right.
obligation from our part to include the folks south of the line? We're making some environmental decisions to approve it, and it impacts Connecticut. Is there any liability associated with those decisions?
I don't know the answer to that question, not at this point in time with the ANRAD. When a notice of intent is presented, there's an actual project, then I think there probably would be some question on how work on this site could affect those wetlands, which then discharge off, and what are the consequences there. But as part of the ANRAD, I don't know that there would be that coordination, but.
Is that something we can put in the language? An obligation for the applicant to work with the folks that are south of the line?
As part of the ORAD, no, but I think if you highly recommend that early coordination and impacts on wetlands, that can be discussed at this time.
Okay. And do we have a copy of those charts?
Which charts?
Your slide deck that you've been presenting?
Yeah.
Yep, I have it, yeah.
I get it, thanks. That's all I have.
Is there,
Thank you, sir.
dealing state to state, are there requirements that you guys have to fulfill if, in the case that of the development?
As far as the regulatory requirements for wetlands in Connecticut? We're working with the Connecticut team to make sure that as we develop it, that we're considering that. So we have a wetland group that works in Connecticut that's working with conjunction with us. So whatever we propose, as you said, in the notice of intent,
Notification,
will be.
would they have to be notified if they were abutters from Connecticut?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, yeah, we will make sure that we, as the notice of intent comes together, and at least a courtesy notification, even if there isn't a regulatory, strict requirement, we generally provide courtesy notifications for any abutting town, or in this case, abutting state.
Right,
would
we haven't
want-
had it
would
come up
want to
with
be
abutting
notified.
state before, abutting towns
Abutting towns is
required that, but
yeah.
it hasn't come up, and I didn't see anything in the regs about that, so.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
good question, it's a question for DEP, I think, too.
Yeah, we'll look into it from our side. It's a very good question, and we need to track it. We also were talking about potentially providing the GPS points for whoever the peer review is to allow them to navigate the site a little bit better, if that helps as a shapefile. Basically, what we looked at yesterday on the site to help them get around, given how difficult it is and
I'm sure
challenging.
that'd be a
So
big help.
whoever the peer reviewer is, just, we can package that up and get it over for them to use as a tool.
My only hang-up is the smelly road. What?
I'm with you.
I think we have to find out what that
It was
is.
pretty epic. Yeah, that was an
I'm
epic
concerned
smell.
That other piece of property above it has,
A source.
a problem as a result of that. I mean, I've been in the woods my whole life, and I've never smelled that.
It's pretty pungent, yeah.
So can we check on that? Can we just take a bottle of that water and,
Test the water in the road?
yeah. If you don't do it, and we do it, you won't believe us, so.
I can ask and see if we can do that, but I mean, I don't know that Breakneck Road is, it's not really part of is it on the property? Is it
Yeah, it's
technically
going down on the
property?
property.
It's on this,
You're-
on the
it's
side,
draining
right?
onto the
It's
property.
onto the property,
In portions, yeah.
Yeah, it's-
It doesn't match the property line exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. But portions of it are.
Can I use that later in court? The property line exactly, that's not gonna work. It's going down on, so if you could consider testing that.
Yeah, we'll ask.
Get a bottle of it and send it to a lab or something.
Yeah, and see what's going on there. Yeah, there were two of them, right, that were
Right, yeah.
pretty strong.
And I thought you guys did a great job. And so Becky, anybody have any other comments? Let's go to the audience. Bob, how you doing?
May a local speak up?
I guess so.
Right. A subject came up during discussion.
Nope,
Oh, do you want the
Nope.
mic? Yeah.
gotta have a mic.
Hold on, we'll bring it to you.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm Bob Briere, 50 Arnold Road, in the small village of Fiskdale, part of the village of town of Sturbridge. I've been here in this town for 85 years. I've seen a lot of things come and a lot of things go. Most of the things that went deserved to go. That's personal opinion. One thing that I thought was taken quite lightly tonight was Lead Mine Brook. Lead Mine Brook is the source of the Quinnebog River. If anybody wants to go, I'll be very happy to take you down there and show you that source. The mighty Mississippi starts out as a brook in northern Minnesota, and ends up being the mighty Mississippi. The water that comes down, known as Lead Mine Brook, starts north of Lead Mine Pond, which is at 807 feet elevation, is the highest waterway in this neck of the woods. So the water from north of Lead Mine Pond comes from a marshland, swampland, I call it, but I'm sure the technical people have nicer terms than that, comes into the north end of Lead Mine Pond, comes out, and as it enters into Lead Mine Pond, it's a brook about 18 inches wide. I've been doing tours of Sturbridge for over 20 years. And one of the first places I take people on my tour is the source of the Quinnebog River. To me, it's a big thing. How many communities can say they have the source of a river in it? That river comes into Lead Mine Pond as a brook, about 18 inches wide. My point to the people is, would you like to straddle the Quinnebog River? And everybody looks at me and say, uh-huh. Where are we going to do that? You'll see. And they do. Goes into Lead Mine Pond, comes out of Lead Mine Pond as Lead Mine Brook. It goes southerly, crosses Lead Mine Road, if you're familiar with what Lead Mine Road is. Down it hangs a little bit to the east and comes down parallel with Old Route 15, all the way down to almost the Connecticut line. There's a field there, a fairly good-sized field. If you walk down that field, and I'm not sure any of you have, but please do, and you'll see the water is a little bit wider there. That is still Lead Mine Brook. I have from Google Earth maps that show Lead Mine Brook. And it comes down right next to the old Route 15, gets down to a point where there's a clearing. Back in my day, that was where Howard Johnson's restaurant was. It closed because probably a lot of lack of traffic is now diverted to the interstate and moved up to now where today's Burger King sits. That clearing, for your information, the football game that you've been watching was supposed to be taking place on that spot. In this room, in the room down below it rather, Sturbridge officials, committee people were invited to a meeting. It's going to save the town of Sturbridge. We're going to be rich. Okay. Developer from Natick came in, said the Boston Patriots, or the Boston football team, want to build a new stadium. It'll be called Schaefer Stadium, if that rings a bell with you. And he painted a picture just like these people have painted a picture of the equestrian center. Well, beautiful, all kinds of things, good things. The main thing is the stadium. The Tantascwa football team would have use of that for their home games. Now, there's a first. Any big events in Sturbridge, Sturbridge wants a big event, can be held in the stadium. He was doing good. He had everybody eating out of his hand. Unfortunately, he made a statement, and when he made the statement, this audience, bigger than it's in here now, went out the door, and I swear nobody said even good night to that gentleman. 3 weeks later, I read an article in the local newspaper that the Boston football team was going to have Schaefer Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts. We missed it by a couple of weeks, but all he said we needed to do is for the town of Sturbridge to put up the money. It was night. We've heard enough. But he painted a picture just like the pictures I've seen passed around and sent to me in the mail about all the beautiful things that's going to take place down there. They don't know that the Quinnebog River comes down through that area and flows in after it crosses under 84, just below the point where Old Route 15 joins 84. It crosses under both lanes of 84, continues south, and the map from Google Earth shows it as Lead Mine Brook goes into Goodall Pond. I didn't hear anybody talk about Goodall Pond. And the water from there comes out of Goodall Pond, joins, or rather the Mashpog Pond joins the Quinnebog River at that point. And they go into under 84 again into Hamilton Reservoir. And that name comes from the mills in Southbridge, the Hamilton Woolen Mills. The reservoir was built for water power for those mills. It continues on down into the East Field Dam. Now, everybody thinks that's the beginning of the Quinnebog River. No, it was just a little stream back at Lead Mine Pond. Anybody doesn't believe me, I will take you there, we'll travel the whole thing, and I'll make a believer of you. I just feel it's got to be adjacent to their property and maybe part of their property. And I'll be doggone if I'm going to sit here and let anybody tell me that they can screw up the source of the Quinnebog River and nobody says anything. And I hope you've listened and do your best to make sure that whatever they do, if they get to do it, that river continues to have its water undisturbed as Lead Mine Brook coming down through that property. Thank you.
Well, we'll do our absolute best, and these people have done an excellent job. You know, they mapped it out, they know where it is, they know where it goes, when it's on their property. So you know,
But did they know the source, where it really begins?
yes, they did.
Okay.
Yep, they did. And they also know the Hammett Brook starts there, on the top portion, and goes into the Quinnebog.
Which does?
Hammett Brook, not up there, the top portion of it. Yeah. That goes the other direction and goes into the Quinnebog.
Yes.
OSB
Eventually,
project.
right, I know the road to the village.
Yeah,
Road to the village,
right.
yes.
So both sources, one loops around one way and the other goes straight north. And they both, and we'll do everything we can to keep them protected.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's where my question for cold water fisheries came from.
Yeah.
Because if the water was going to be blending in with Hammett Brook, we got a winner. Because we were hoping that, not us, the state was hoping that Hammett Brook was going to be a cold water fishery. They even took down dams,
Put almost,
millions of dollars worth of dams, in order to make them cold water fisheries.
Yeah. This is what you were talking about yesterday.
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's still some barriers out there to the fish bass.
all right, we have gone around. I think we're
Phone line.
pretty much agreement on where we are. Anybody else?
Yep, is there anyone on the public line who'd like to speak in regards to the ANRAD for the Breakneck Road project? Again, anyone on the line who'd like to speak in regards to the ANRAD application for the Breakneck Road project? Nope.
So the one thing Eric, we had said that Chris, I mean, we're going to lock in on a date for the next visit.
Sidewalk.
Okay.
Yeah. Becky?
Next site visit schedule is the 9th. We also have site visits on November 23rd as well.
November 23rd?
Yep, so
Or
November 9th.
How's November?
Oh, never mind, I'm sorry, I'm skipping. October 26th, yeah, I'm jumping ahead here.
October 26th?
October 26th, yep.
I think we should push it beyond the 26th.
Okay, October 9th?
Is that
I
all
mean,
right with you?
November 9th?
The
November
28th
9th?
is the vote, so, you know.
Yeah, I think the 9th.
I would like to be on that, and I'm in Iowa, so
Okay.
if there's any way to do it 2 weeks after that,
Well, Chris can put you on this.
well.
Well, virtual site walk. It'll be way easier than hiking up that hill.
Easier, yeah.
And there'll be no smell.
Hold on a second.
There'll be no smell, that's true.
I got a site walk to be on, you guys can break yourselves.
Go ahead, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, I'm just, if it can be done, I would like to be there, so, I mean, if we could do it on,
So that would be
was
the
it the 9th plus 14th?
23rd.
Of November?
Yeah.
Yeah, the further we go, the leaf off is going to happen.
That's true.
But, I mean, I'm fine with it.
That's true. I mean, there'll be, yeah, we'll
Leaf-
be definitely, basically out of growing season at that point.
Right in the middle
Yeah.
of fucking season, too.
Well,
And
I
we-
mean, I don't have to be there, it's just.
No, that's fine. You do have to be
If it's not
there.
gonna work, it's not gonna work.
What about a different day of the week?
Or, I mean,
We're fine. doing
Well,
it.
that whole week.
We can do-
done.
Leaf off,
We
you
can
can
do it the
see that
week
more, too.
before.
Yeah.
The first week of November.
Any day that week.
Yeah.
I'm okay.
But, okay,
Well, we have a meeting.
They're both Tuesdays.
what are those dates,
They're-
Becky? The week before, those five,
The 1st through the 5th.
yeah, 1st through the 5th. Chris?
Yeah. I mean, I'm all right with that week, too.
I'm-
Okay. Gentlemen?
Before we move on, Becky, you were going to explain what an NRAD is.
A notice of resource area delineation.
Right, so could you do that slowly enough so that the general
Notice
public
of
can hear
resource
it?
area delineation, the purpose of the application is to verify the resource areas on the site.
Oh, yeah, right.
We're not reviewing a project at this time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So what's a good day that week for you?
I don't know what's going to happen with work right now, but, possibly the Tuesday, the 2nd.
Second? Roy, how are you doing for that week?
Probably later in the week would be better for me, like a Friday.
Friday, I will just say, Friday is the only day of that week that I cannot do.
Yeah, Fridays are pretty tough for me, too.
Okay.
Also,
Okay.
there's 10 public hearings on that meeting, I don't know.
I'm sorry.
You'll be here for quite some time on the second.
We have a long meeting on the
Long
second.
meeting.
So don't do the third, is what you're saying?
I'm just saying, honestly, it'll be a day long.
Possibly the 4th,
How's the
Thursday the
4th?
4th.
Roy, you
Yeah.
do the
I'll
4th?
try, I'll try, yeah.
That would, yeah, Thursday the 4th would work.
Okay. The 4th, you can be in?
I can move around my schedule.
Okay, November 4th then. Let's try and do it.
In the morning again, 9
Yeah.
o'clock?
Yeah.
Meet at the same location?
Sure.
Oh, just one other thing, when we were out on site, we were talking about the chapter land. So I did look up in the GIS, so yeah, 16 Cross Street does look like it's in for forestry.
No, I talked to Ann.
Oh, you did?
Yesterday, Ann checked all of the liens and she checked her rolls on chapter.
Okay,
And she
it's-
said Chesla's never been in chapter.
Oh, I'll check with her, because it's in the GIS mapping that we use on the website. So yeah, I'll check with her, because they've got it mapped as that, so, yeah.
Okay, so the 4th is where we landed?
Yeah.
Okay.
So because we don't have a DEP file, we can't request the peer
Well-
review, or can we?
Well, you could, but we didn't open the bylaw public hearing. We
Yeah,
only
so-
opened under the state act, because they have to notify the abutters appropriately under the bylaw. So the continuation would be, do a continuation and have one vote at the next meeting. That makes sense. For review of, peer review for wetland delineation under bylaw and under the state act.
Under vote.
I mean, I guess you could vote for under the state act today if you liked, and then just
No.
wait and do the bylaw. It
Yeah,
just
I
makes
would-
it
yeah.
easier, I guess,
No.
you know?
Let's,
It's complicated as it already is,
yeah,
I
let's
guess.
do a continuation and go to that date for that site visit. and then go
Okay.
from there.
Thank you.
When are we continuing to,
And you realize at this late date that the person or persons who might be doing that third-party review may have to delay because of weather. I mean, it's going to be really difficult to be able to ID all of these wetlands under a snow cover.
Yeah, so.
Agreed.
Agreed, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what, you know.
So I'd recommend continuing this to the next meeting, because you need to be able to open the next public hearing and to get a vote for a peer review. And then that's gonna take some time to get proposals, so at that point, I recommend continuing out a little bit, so we can present it to different firms, put an RFP out there, get them back, you can review them. As that we'll be approaching December or so, so whether or not the review can be completed over the winter is gonna be dependent on on-ground conditions, how much snow cover we have, frozen ground conditions, the need to see vegetation. But in addition, I anticipate we'd want the peer reviewer probably out there in the spring. As they stated before, they did do some survey work while they were out there May and June and did find egg masses. We would want our peer reviewer to look and kind of confirm and see if there's any other areas that they think would be suitable. And if there's any difference of opinion, then we'd be maybe looking at a spring survey. Because typically, depending on what conditions are, surveys might start in beginning of March, because you're doing, not just looking for egg masses, other evidence of breeding, calling, spermatophores, things of that nature too, that could have been missed, that would have started in
But
early
we're
March.
moving it forward at a satisfactory pace for the
Yep.
applicant and for us. So, I mean.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to explain that.
Yeah.
I've got a question through the chair. Becky, how do we handle the off-site wetland resources that could have buffers projecting onto this property? How do we get that?
Well, I mean, I'd like to check with DEP on that too a little bit. But if they're just asking for resource area delineation on the subject parcel, that's all we're approving. I would, recommend in the ORAD, there could be some, notation in there that we're not approving any, jurisdictional buffer zones that could be projected from off-site wetlands. And when a notice of intent comes in, they will be required to look at that. If there is something off-site that projects a buffer zone, riverfront area, or anything on the subject parcel.
Okay.
And the smelly water, they're gonna take a look
Yeah.
at. And that's on property that they are, in control of in some way, shape, or form. So,
Okay.
we'll have to see how that goes.
Chris, how many potential VPs have you seen so far on the property?
I think we have 12.
Well,
No, but 12 actual. I'm talking about other potentials, ones that you said,
Oh, well,
I think if we said, we said, yeah, this is a pool, because we saw the egg masses, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we were very conservative.
right.
You know, there's ponding within the roadway that does not meet the, you know, like we saw, right? Smelly ponds in the roadway that are not vernal pools,
I
but,
understand that, but even today, you can look at a depression and say, not, that's one, and it may not even have any bloody water in it. So I'm talking about ones that you looked at and said, I'm really not sure, but in February or March, I might be able to say yes or no.
Well, I mean, it would be, I think,
Be March
probably a
or
little
April.
late, yeah, a little later in the season, probably especially out here.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very helpful that we saw activity on the site, right? So you have a site that had, we were on both sides of that divide during vernal pool season this year and saw active pools, right? So we knew, we were out there at the time that the activity was
Okay.
happening,
Yeah.
right? So typically, if you're going to see anything that you go, I wonder, you're going to see egg masses. The hard part of being a wetland scientist is when you go out and it's not quite ready yet, right? Maybe it's somewhere else in the state is active, but your site, for whatever reason, hasn't activated yet, and you have to make that call. But we were out there when the site was active, and we know that there was activity from all of the, vernal pool species that are obligate. So we had a lot of people out there for a lot of days at a time during that season. So we've a high degree of confidence that these vernal pools are actually vernal pools, even though they're not mapped by heritage and they're not PVPs. But we saw really clear, distinct habitat characteristics of the pool for both the bottom type, the cover type, and but also the egg masses. So anything that, was maybe like a depression in a road, right, where you have a wheel rut that has water in it, that doesn't have vernal pool characteristics, we didn't see any egg masses in there, there's no kind of, I wonder, we're fairly confident that it's not a viable pool.
Right. I mean, yeah, part of that is, again, having the appropriate hydro period, right? So something
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah,
that's
it's gonna
just
dry up in a
the
week.
road is not
Yeah.
gonna cut it.
Okay.
So I hope that answers the question. I know, and vernal pools are tough, they are, right? If you
Yeah.
don't hit them at the right time, they're really tough to make that call. If you see them in the early season or in the dry season when they are just a pool and it's a depression and you
Well, you even
see
get in a
the,
position where you have to do sound.
we have to do what?
Sound.
Sound, listening for like the wood frogs? Yeah, well, that's the fun part of vernal pooling.
Oh, yeah.
yeah. All right, David, anything? Anything? All right,
We're going to vote on the continuation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Continuation
All in-
to second?
I beg your pardon?
Second?
The next meeting, so that way you can open the bylaw and,
Yep.
and vote for peer review.
Okay.
So then would we need to be present at that, or is that just gonna be a formality?
Yeah.
And then we'll move on from there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, formality, and I think, ask for the continuation in writing.
Okay,
We can have that.
okay. Terrific, thank you.
Thank you. All
Need to
in
vote.
favor by name, the continuation?
David Barnacle in favor.
Stephen Chittister in favor?
Roy Bishop in favor.
Ed Goodwin in favor?
Eric Gaspard in favor.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time.
So Chris, here's a copy of that
Oh.
form, just so you can have it, so just, yeah, just have him redo it and do the, check the conservation one.
Thanks.
All right, thanks. Okay.
Time's over.
We're at 100 Paradise Lane, continuation NOI, raise and rebuild. Mike and Lenny.
You say yes?
So just quickly, this is a, lost my paperwork here. A continuation from a month ago. There was discussion about looking at project revisions. Commission also asked to go out and do another site visit, take a look at it. We did do that with the engineer, and we're waiting for revised materials to come back. Lenny did submit a revised plan yesterday, so it was not reflected in the detailed agenda. And they're here today. They'd like to discuss that revised plan.
Okay. Lenny? How you
Good
doing?
evening.
Lenny Jalbert from Jalbert Engineering.
You have something you can put up, Becky?
I was gonna say, there's nothing on OneDrive.
Yeah, we got that yesterday. I do have it electronically, so I can put it up for you. I didn't provide it to you because it came yesterday, so.
Anybody want to see it?
He's got hard copies for you too, so,
Oh, for each of us?
yeah.
Okay, fine.
Or the ones of you who
And
likes.
Lenny, in the off chance that Michael has to speak, you should have him introduce himself. Some of us know him.
I'm Michael Detterondo, 98 Paradise Lane.
Oh, great. The slope is always wonderful at these places.
Yeah.
You gotta put it up on the screen.
You can.
Yep. Oh, yeah, I gotta share my screen again, right?
Wow, look at that.
Let's see.
All right.
Share. It's, no colors on it for you, though.
Oh, the colored one is at my desk.
Lenny's got some color on this.
You guys?
A little bit, a little green, a little red, a little blue.
Where?
No, I didn't,
No, on this.
Oh, on that.
There we go.
I didn't use any colored pencils or anything, because basically, the only thing we did was to take the building that was at 45 feet from the lake itself, and talking to one of the members of the board, they wanted it at 50 feet, so we moved the building back in a westerly direction to be within, outside of the 50-foot buffer. That's basically it. The other thing before we discussed at the second site walk was to move the garage, which is located next to Paradise Lane, adjacent to the existing house. Looking at it and looking at the impact itself, I decided not to move the garage, but to leave it as is. The reason for that, if I move the garage to the adjacent of the existing house, yes, I'm getting rid of some pavement that's adjacent to the house there, but I'm also adding the pavement back onto Paradise Lane, servicing the two-stall garage, which is up above. So what we're doing is we're taking a pervious area and moving it and putting in an impervious area up above for the garage, which I consider to be at best negative as far as impact for the site itself. The other thing was that when we went out there, the property at 98 Paradise Lane that is going into the easterly direction into the property, we talked about the grading changes that were going to take place. Looking at the plan itself closely, the grade changes did take place. They are on the plan, that there's a retaining wall located both on the north and south side of the proposed stone driveway, and that grading there is changed going from 94, 96, 98 is changed to going to 91. So we haven't changed any of the grades in that area. We've left the impervious area as is, the proposed stone drive as is, and the proposed paved drive as is, which has the least amount of impact for the site. And just by moving the back, the building itself back 6 feet, that was the only change that we come up with. Before we added the extra trees and everything onto the site, which is there, which was on your previous plan under revision 4, and the revision 5 I consider at best minor, in that the only thing that was involved is the building itself. Any questions, I'll be happy to answer it.
So can I just, so maybe I have my revisions, maybe I'm a revision behind, but I think you also made the pervious part of the driveway narrower that is over on the 98 side, right? That, yes, that's.
Right there.
Yeah, that used to be wider there. That was the full width all the way down. I think you cut that back.
That was on revision 4, yeah.
Oh, it was, okay, sorry.
Becky?
So the last comments and concerns you had were, right, shifting out of the 50-foot, he did do that there, but really looking at reducing the impervious surface on the site. That was really what your concerns were last time.
Mr. B?
I'm sort of curious about the 500-gallon leaching pit, Lenny.
The what?
500-gallon leaching pit.
That's for the discharge off the building itself.
So there's two of them.
Yeah.
They're connected to the perimeter drain of the building, the residence. If you look on your plan, it's right here under. Here. Here's the leaching pit, where he's connected to that corner, this one is connected to that corner. That's on the revision. This line should be connected right to there, and that line should be connected.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks, Lenny.
Move the building back, okay? Therefore, the discharge.
No other questions, Mr. Chairman.
What? Okay, no questions? Stephen?
Yeah, so I appreciate the change to move the building back, that's helpful. And it looks like, so there's a tree right here. I think on the original plan that was proposed to be removed, that's not going to be removed now, is that correct?
That's not going to be removed.
Okay. Honestly, I'm still concerned about the amount of impervious surface on this property, with, 3 driveways. So I don't think that concern was really addressed, but I do appreciate moving the house back. So that's my comment.
Michael, how active is the lower driveway going to be?
Not particularly active, it's just primarily access.
Is there any way that you could make that an impervious surface, pavers or something?
That's what it is proposed.
I thought it was pervious.
They did change.
I'm sorry.
The shaded area is pervious pavers. He did make that revision on one of the last
okay. Right.
plans.
I missed that completely.
And there's a proposed stone driveway
Yeah.
and then pavement up on top.
Yeah, I know pervious is not perfect, right? But the only impervious part is the small upper portion of the driveway off of Paradise. The rest is either stone or pervious pavers.
No, I understand. Eric?
No, I'm good with thank you for moving it out of the buffer zone, but I'm good with the project. The only thing that, obviously the pervious pavers, we need some sort of O&M plan associated with that, if that can just be added to the order of conditions, just make sure that there's upkeep.
Sure.
That would, because, get enough silting in there and all of a sudden.
Understood.
So.
Oh, when the kids start driving, he's going to have to put down power anyway.
What do you think Michael was thinking about?
Becky, anybody in the audience? Roy? Oh, Roy, did you have a question? I'm sorry.
Nope.
I don't know that Roy can, because we started
Oh, this one did start
he was on.
before. Yep,
Well, I
so you
screwed
can't
up
vote on
anyway.
this one, Roy.
On the casual.
You were being proactive. Yeah,
Is there anyone in the public line who'd like to speak in regards to the notice of intent for 100 Paradise Lane? Again, anyone on the line that would like to speak in regards to the notice of intent for 100 Paradise Lane? It's a negative.
All right. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved, Eric Gaspar.
David Barnacle, second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor by name?
David Barnacle, in favor.
Stephen Chittister in favor.
Abstain.
Ed Goodwin in favor.
Eric Gaspar in favor. I'd like to make a motion that we approve DEP File 300-1108 for 100 Paradise Lane, with the agent's notification and the inclusion of an O&M plan for the pervious pavers.
Yep, I would I didn't have recommendations on this one for you because we didn't have a plan when I did it, but I would just also note that we do have the bank work that's proposed as part of the project, so there should be conditions in there, similar to what we talked about earlier, shoreline work to be performed in dry conditions, if not, develop a plan, all of our regular typical standard orders of conditions. I'd also, I'll have to work, it's Mark from Ground Effects, there's not too much he's doing to the bank, he's just adding some things, but we will want, and Lenny's familiar, we've had conditions, we talked about some earlier tonight, for kind of staking, and pre and post photos of the bank work that he does with an as-built plan. I'd also, as a reminder, there is a Chapter 91 license required for the dock and potentially the bank work. Applicant is required to get that before starting those portions of the project. So that'll need to be in place. And then I'd also recommend too, because we do have a lot of work around existing trees on site, that trees and root zones are protected during work. You've added conditions in the past for like snow fence, things like that to kind of be put around so that way people don't drive over, excavate on accident, and have concerns. That's something that you've asked for in the past. The O&M that you mentioned, we do have that on file, have a perpetual condition for that in there to add, and then I think that's it. Oh, and then just to have those plantings, recommend having a timeline on getting those plantings in, so that makes sure that gets accomplished as part of the project too. Not that you wouldn't, but we've had other sites where people kind of, it gets dropped off there. So some type of time frame upon the completion of site work to get those in.
Okay, great.
However you want to do that.
All of that. For the record.
David Barnacle will second it with all of that.
All right. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, David?
David Barnacle in favor.
Stephen Chittister in favor.
Ed Goodwin in favor.
Eric Gaspar in favor.
All right, and you're abstaining.
I am.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yep,
Gents.
take care.
Appreciate you working with me.
Yep.
Lenny, don't forget about that 7-day deadline next time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Watching you.
Give him a slap side of the head when you get outside, Mike.
You also said you're gonna go every 3 weeks now rather than 2?
Yes,
Next year.
next year. We'll let you know. We'll send you an email and all our new stuff.
I'll send you a detailed email about it.
Okay.
Give you your schedule.
That's good.
Give you an
My
extra.
best 1 week.
That means he only works 1 day every 3 weeks.
Have a good night, guys.
Take care.
When do we get the order of conditions?
Within 21 days?
Business days.
Well, okay, within 21 days, is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, we'll work to draft that.
The reason I'm saying that is I'm not pushing, it's just that he wants to
think
take
you
the
are.
house down.
Yeah, so it's a hazard, I mean, I'm in no rush to build.
Yeah.
I'm just in a rush to get what's there down, because windows are popping out, and I think it's gonna collapse if I don't, and there's people in there.
Okay, yeah, and I know Mark stopped in and he started getting things in place to start doing that work. We'll do our best to get that permit out. We still have a couple permits from the last meeting that I'm planning on issuing this week, so we'll do our best to get that out as soon as possible. But you do have a 10 business day appeal period. You can't start work, so.
10 business day appeal from tonight?
From the issuance.
From the
Yep.
issuance, so 21 days plus.
Yep.
We have to, when's your next meeting?
The second. My plan is to work on those other 2 permits tomorrow, and anything that was approved from this meeting, try to get that done this week too. So that is my goal.
I think, I don't think that, I think we're fine with that.
Yeah, so just anticipate if by the end of the week, and then put on 10 business days, and then you can figure out your start date from that.
Okay.
All right?
Great.
All
Thanks,
right, have a good one.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
We are now, excuse me, at 30 Woodlawn Drive. Notice of intent?
So for this, we actually, I had to just check with the engineer. He thought it was automatically continued because he missed our deadline, but I did ask and get the continuation request in writing. They did work to submit a revised plan, and then another revised plan came in, so that will be continued to our next meeting.
All right.
All right? So that's November 2nd.
All in favor? Continue?
David Barnacle in favor.
Stephen Chittister in favor.
Roy Bishop in favor.
Ed Goodwin in favor.
Eric Gaspar in favor.
Good. All right, Becky, what do you want to do for wetland decisions?
We already did that one earlier, that certificate of compliance request.
Yeah.
We have administrative decisions. We have minutes of October 5th, 2021 to be approved.
All
Any
right.
questions?
Do I have a motion for the minutes of October 5th?
Motion to approve the minutes of October.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it, but I have a comment to make.
All right.
We have one sentence that I think should be removed. Aaron, if you would go to,
Hold on, I'm gonna get them out.
pull them up, yeah.
Okay,
Number 4,
4.
5th bullet, 3rd dot. Because of the fact of the next sentence underneath it, I think that sentence should be removed. Because what that,
RFPs were sent out, 2 proposals.
yeah,
Both entities are qualified.
delaying it for the 3rd proposal to come in is a waste of time when we agreed that we were going to use Oxbow on the very next issue. So you can't agree to only consider 2, but you still say that you're going to consider the 3rd
It's
one.
supposed to be 3 RFPs were sent out, only 2 proposals have received. Sorry.
3. Okay.
Would that solve it?
That would.
Okay. There's an edit.
Right. That's it?
All set.
Second? You did second.
I seconded it.
Yeah. Any discussion further? All in favor?
David Barnacle in favor.
Stephen Chittister in favor.
Roy Bishop in favor.
Ed Goodwin in favor?
Eric Gaspar in favor.
All right. Becky, anything new, else?
Well, that's going down the line here. I mean, I have a few things, new business. I don't know if you want to keep going and just do administrative updates.
Sure, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, old business.
What?
No, I don't have anything. Oh, old business, I was gonna do under agent report. You know how, we did the bylaw update and the regulation updates this summer as part of that codification or
Yep.
spring, however long ago it was, as part of the codification project that the town planner was working on. So we were waiting, all the bylaws had to go to the Attorney General to get approval. That happened, and the company that, was contracted to do this for us has provided us with those hard copies now. So I do have a hard copy, and it's everything. It's all the bylaws and regulations together. So we will make copies for you and give you the updated text, hopefully for like the next meeting with the regulations in there. I just haven't had a chance to do that. So we just got it recently, within the past like week and a half or so anyways. So we will have that, as now we need to start referencing that. We also are gonna be getting a link from them, so that way we can put it on the website that refers people to that. So that way, right now, they're still looking at the old regulations in there. So we'll be taking care of that, but we'll give you those hard copies.
I don't see a need to
You don't
print on paper. If you could
If you
provide
don't
me
want
a
it.
PDF
Sure,
that I
absolutely,
can have
yep.
and save in my email,
Yep.
I
Awesome.
don't see any reason why we need to have
And-
that in paper.
I agree with that.
Okay, anyone else want paper or, no?
I better get paper,
Okay,
yeah.
you want paper?
Would you like
2
paper?
papers? Okay. Well, I'll give you the PDF for it as well. Actually, what I'll do is I'll, can upload it in the OneDrive. I will also, per your request, I'll upload that presentation that was provided tonight too, because it's a large file, it's the easiest way to get to it, so.
Thank you.
All right, but I just wanted to let you know about that because we have been waiting to get that back. Yeah, it keeps changing that.
All right, committee updates. CPA is meeting on the 28th. That's the next meeting for us.
Lakes, the next meeting is Thursday,
Thursday.
and I will be
Right,
bringing up your requests.
freshwater clams.
Freshwater, no, well, the Siaka report or something like that?
Yeah.
I have it written down.
Okay.
But the other thing I'm going to, because we had that site visit out on Lake Road.
South
no,
Shore.
South Shore
yeah,
Drive.
Yeah,
It's another example of just how, these private roads and the residents of these private roads kicking the can down the road and not wanting to have a road association is eventually going to come to a head where we're gonna have some washouts and we're gonna have some pretty serious failures. So I'm going to bring that up again to them to strenuously suggest, in whatever capacity I can, that they have some hard conversations with their neighbors about whether or not this is an investment they should be making.
Yeah.
Because it is impacting everyone, and obviously, that one instance there that we were looking at on South Shore Drive, I don't know that in 5 months, there isn't a washout that completely blocks off the ability to traverse that road.
And then it's going to be a major expense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
I got a ride to go look at that.
I found a mission, David, that's, get some asphalt around the lakes.
I know.
But, anyway, that's what I plan on discussing.
I got to go look at it Friday, and it brought back old memories because that hole has been there frequently. However, this time, it looks like South Shore Drive is in danger of collapse if it moves even a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it looks like the silt fence is what's holding back that from washing out.
Yeah.
And as soon as that fence comes out, who knows what's gonna happen?
Yeah, I don't want to cross my fingers.
Yeah, right. So,
Yeah.
anyway, I figured I would use that as that, as well as a conversation that we are having with a new resident on the lake that has direct impact from his across-the-street neighbor of water that is discharging from one property to the next, about working cooperatively with each other to try to fix some things.
And you felt you got some positive input from him?
Well, I mean, obviously, the individual who's being impacted, it wants to figure out if there's a way to fix this, but
But he had originally said he wasn't doing a damn thing.
no, I don't know that was, if you're talking about the South Shore Drive piece that was the original part of the conversation?
Yep.
That's a separate thing, that was not discussed.
Right.
But there's an other piece further down the road where we essentially have water collecting on one property and then a pipe going to another property and causing a washout downstream. So, yeah, and it was put in by, at one point, from the sounds of it, DPW, back before we were basically washing our hands of this from a liability standpoint. But
Yeah.
it's just an example of, nobody wants to write the check, but eventually there's going to be a big check that's going to have to be reckoned with, and they're better off sitting down and figuring this out and working through the betterment process so they pay a little bit over time, as opposed to having this become a really big issue down the road.
And we have two great examples here in town
Yeah.
of where that has worked.
Yep.
Clack Road is a great example, because Clack Road really was a disaster.
Karen.
I mean, Karen Road, I'm sorry. I got,
And Mountain Brook.
and Mountain Brook's the second one.
Yeah.
I mean, they are just beautiful examples of all the people getting together and saying, we can't tolerate this anymore. People on Mountain Brook could not leave because the ice was so thick.
They've already attempted to start.
Okay, we gotta move this along.
Yeah, sorry. Anyway, that's what I'm discussing.
Eric, do you want a list of roads?
Well, we'll be looking for a mission report,
What?
Eric. We'll be looking for a mission report routinely.
I know, we could probably have to have lakes meetings rather than conservation meetings. Becky, we're all set with a special use permit, right?
Well, you just need to vote on it. So this is the one that Dave gave us last time and talked about it. So this is for Rotary, they're doing a 5K, starting at OSV, parking at OSV Education Center, going down the road, going on the lead mine trails. Estimated number of people, he's got a 75 cars, 50 cars will be at OSV though. So this is for October 31st from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m.
And we should repeat the fact that it is being run on our trails. It was stated at the Select Board meeting last night that they're running in OSV. That's not the case. Only OSV Education Department for parking and the lead mine trails for the 5K.
Okay.
Great.
And
that's
right,
an
also
important
important to
point.
note that it's a 501c3 or not, activity. Everyone in favor of that?
All in favor? David?
Yes, David Barnacle in favor.
Stephen Chittister in favor.
Roy Bishop in favor?
Ed Goodwin in favor?
I made the motion.
Eric Gaspar in favor.
How about we try that one quick more time? Somebody want to make a motion? And then we'll
We just approved it.
all right.
It's approved. It's just a certificate.
It's informal, it's
Yeah.
informal,
Okay.
I guess, so that's,
Before you ask Mr. Chittister to make a motion, Mr. Chairman, I have one item of old business.
Go for it.
I got a couple things afterwards, too.
Yeah, no,
sorry.
go ahead. I want you to finish first, Becky, please.
Oh, all right. So just a quick update. I met with a representative from DOT over at Cedar Lake for another wonderful site walk over there. I had a list, which was started by Raul. We went through all the things that need to be wrapped up, as well as them needing to finish the detention basins on the Hamilton Road side. They are gonna ask the contractor to try to complete those basins, this fall, but they do think that it's probably gonna be next spring that that's gonna happen. They are paving the eastbounds, one of the sides right now, they're not gonna get to the other side, I don't remember, so I don't wanna misstate it. So there might be time, before the end of the season that they can get to the detention basin work, but it might have to happen in the spring. We also had the conversation again that, it was supposed to be done this year. However, the contract with the contractor, when they did that, it went till next year, so it never stated having our work done by a certain time frame.
Okay.
But there are a bunch of little things that need to get done. He's gonna work on that and give me a summary of when they plan to address all those things, so we should have something soon. We're getting there. All the trees were planted over by Verzillo's property, all the arborvitaes, all of that work was all done. It's mostly just BMP cleanup of some sediment in the swale too.
So the plantings that we talked about the last time we did a site visit, that got,
Those are in, yep. And, why can't I think of his
what
name?
about
Not
removal
Raoul.
of the plastic?
Not Raoul?
Not gonna remove it.
They're not gonna remove
No.
the.
Guy that
It was in the
for
plan.
TNT. I guess he.
There was some
himself.
things that I missed that
Yeah.
I wish that I hadn't missed.
Well, we all missed that. I didn't even know that I missed it until you brought it up.
Well, and it's impervious on the plan too.
Yeah.
It's
No, I know.
impervious,
Yeah, I didn't,
Yeah, I talked to him about that when I was out there. That shouldn't, he
All right.
said it shouldn't have been that way too, but, all right, just quickly, we have there's a site visit Thursday, we have an appeal with DEP.
Thursday?
Yeah, Thursday at 11 o'clock, I already talked to you about it, if anyone's interested, 30 River Road, we're meeting with DEP on site at 11 a.m., because there's, a site visit for the appeal that they have filed with DEP.
That's October 30th?
That's this Thursday,
That would be,
the 21st?
2 days from now, Ed.
21st, yeah. It's on, and I did move my 11 o'clock, so I'm just gonna take the 10:30 from the truck.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, the 21st.
21st.
And then also, I think I might have mentioned this before, Eric and I stopped and looked at it. Been working with Board of Health. I mean, if you just want to read these real quick, some of you are familiar with these, some of you are not. Oh, there's an extra one here, sorry, I think I didn't give you that. Oh, geez.
No.
Holding everything over here. Board of Health approved issuance of emergency authorization on their end for a flow device install at 31 South Shore Drive at their meeting last night, and they'll be issuing that within the next couple days. So what we have in front of us, this is 31 South Shore Drive. We have the Beaver Dam. This is a site that we've been to. We have, there is a superseding orders of conditions with DEP for some drainage work that needs to be done out there, and I did follow up with them on that, so I'll inform you with that in a minute, Eric. What we have here is Beaver Solutions is proposing to put in this flow device, and I printed all this because it's been a while since we looked at these, but this is the same company that's been putting in the flow devices. It's a good long-term solution for areas that have beaver activity, where, we know that trapping them and removing them, new ones move in, it's not a good long-term solution. Same thing with breaching them and removing them, they come back, they rebuild it. So this is something that, like I said, is a good long-term solution. So I've provided you the information that's been provided to me. I did ask for some details. The intent is to lower the water 10 inches here. That way, they anticipate at that level, it's enough that it keeps the flow going through according to, they gave us the analysis of the stream stats for the watershed right there. And then also enough that it leaves enough water back there for the beavers. So his intent is to take the pipe right into the culvert that, or almost into the culvert that goes under South Shore Drive right there. And he'll have that cage. You can see it in the photo. There's a cage that he puts up there. So that way they can't block that. What else was I gonna say? Their intent is to install it this Friday. And it does come with a maintenance, a 2-year maintenance plan, which with these things is important. So it's guaranteed by Beaver Solutions for that time. They follow up on it and, make sure it's functioning correctly.
What about after the 2 years?
That would fall on the owner, if there was any maintenance.
Right.
And, I don't know, and I'd have to ask him, what his results are on that. Like, has he found that after that 2 years that, the beavers are living with it and there's really no kind of concerns, or what maintenance would be required at that point?
Beaver Solutions has been doing this for a number of years. Originally, this contraption that they're about to put in was called a beaver deceiver.
That was a different company, I guess. So that's what he told me. A beaver deceiver is a different company.
Right, but we have 2 of these
Yep.
in town right now. One of them is in back of the Chinese restaurant, and that worked very nicely for a number of years. And the second one is over on the road for going up to the campgrounds off of Route 49.
I think there's one also at 70.
And that one
Holland.
has just been repaired because the beavers had managed to do some stuff to it, but the indication was it had been in place for 8 years.
Yeah.
And had been working.
So,
They had not had another beaver problem.
Those might be different flow devices. Those might be those beaver deceivers that were put in before.
Yeah.
So we have four sites in town that have these in it, that the town's put in. One of the sites has 2, which is on Holland Road there. So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, but we've got, and so far, so good with success for these. It's a good solution, but they're asking for, so Board of Health issued emergency approval. That's the first step in the process when it comes to putting in a flow device. And they also need your approval to put the flow device in. So I would recommend issuance of that emergency authorization to put it in, based that Board of Health has also, granted that.
Yeah, I
That
think
it's for safety.
the elevation that it drops it down to is the key.
Yeah, yep.
Did they confirm? We talked about onsite, that was gonna be less than 12 inches.
Yes, yep, he's got the 10 inches
Yeah.
in here. Yep, I got that in writing. And then also I did speak to the property owner there because there was a question about the silt fence and other BMPs are still in place from when they did the drainage work. That permit is still open. At this point, he doesn't want to ask for a superseding certificate of compliance, as they're still kind of monitoring it, I guess, and doing some work there. I did ask him to repair that silt fence.
Okay.
He did say that he continually checks on it and makes repairs to it. But to do that, and then I did talk about the opposite side of the road because that's where that culvert, and there's some washout there, and it does look like it's gotten worse since we've been out there. That's not on his property, but he did, when he was doing some work out there, he did want to make some repairs to that. He did say that he could contact DPW. I said, well, DPW, they're required just for certain aspects of private roads. He said, well, if it's a safety issue, I said, you can contact them, but, people really should be working to keep an eye on those things, so.
Good.
All right,
All right,
you want to vote on that for me, please?
all in favor?
David Barnacle in favor?
Stephen Chittister in favor.
Ward Bishop in favor?
Nick Gooder in favor?
Eric Gaspar in favor.
All right. Becky, we're now to David? Or you got?
No, I think I'm good. I got everything.
Okay, go ahead.
David?
We received two separate pieces of paperwork this week electronically that came from outside sources. They were EEOC, et cetera. And one of them talked about the Sturbridge Road or Route 20 project. And in the middle of it, the woman who wrote this paper said, well, we have some corrections that we want to make, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things that she did was she referenced a particular engineering site that had done some work on it. And so just out of curiosity, I pulled up this paper that she had quoted, and it was like 18 pages long. But what it was talking about was McKinstry Brook. What they're talking about is, under Route 20, there has been a pipe that when it was put in the 1920s was like 18 feet long. And then it was added to in the 50s, and it was added to in the 80s. They're planning on adding to it again, because as Route 20 gets wider, because of businesses starting to influx into the area, they simply tack on some. This engineering group actually looked at that pipe, and they used a word I didn't understand, spalls, S-P-A-L-L. What a spall is a crack or an opening in the pipe. In the concrete of the pipe. And what's weird is when you start reading down through this engineering paper, it talks about seeing the rebars. That's how badly open these cracks are. And they're not talking about fixing this pipe or replacing it. They're talking about actually adding an end cap on either ends in order to extend the length so that they can cover it more. And this McKinstry Brook starts in Sturbridge, runs through Sturbridge, and goes over to Charlton, goes through Charlton and ends up in Southbridge. Do we have anything that we are expected to do to prevent this travesty from taking place? Because if all they do is add caps to the ends and don't fix the spalling, and as far as I'm concerned, with the depth of the spalling, where they're talking about being able to see the rebars, this is really, and also they talk about the bridge work, which is the underneath part of the pipe that goes under the road. It's metal, and it's badly pitted, and oftentimes it's bent. And this is supposed to stay just like that. The only thing they're going to do is add some extra width. Shouldn't we be saying something about that to these people?
So that's go ahead.
I have something to add to that. Actually, McKinstry Brook is a cold water fishery, and I read a report a while back about the fish surveys that were done on McKinstry Brook, and just south of Route 20, that section of McKinstry Brook going right up to Route 20, they actually identified trout there. So, yeah, it's a cold water fishery. So I agree with David. If there's anything we can do about that, it would be.
Now, this culvert is exactly where?
The problem is the culvert is in Charlton. My question is, since it's in Charlton, but it's on a stream, A, that is a cold water fishery, and B, emanates from Sturbridge, and then travels through a couple of other towns, isn't there some responsibility for an abutting town to say, wait a minute, the Wetland Protection Act does not permit this. This is a wildlife habitat that could potentially be destroyed because that piping can't last. It was put in the 20s, and it's got, the great word, it's got spalling all over it.
So I don't know, but I think the expansion there is part of, there's that warehouse facility going in right there, and they have to expand the road. I sat in on a MIPA meeting 2 springs ago about that. I think it's the warehouse facility that's going, the Walmart warehouse facility.
Yeah.
So Charlton Conservation is, they'll be reviewing that bridge replacement there. You know, it can bring it to their attention if it's not already to their attention about fixing that. I can check with the agent if that's on their radar, but it also is in MIPA too. That could be something, not sure where their MIPA review is at this point. That was quite a while ago, but could be brought to people's attention, I guess.
I was curious about whether we felt the need to either send a letter to them or send a letter to MIPA or send a letter to this person who sent out the engineering report saying this really concerns us and should not repairs be made after 100 years of the pipe being in the ground. An engineering firm in Springfield has clearly indicated, even though they fix spalls, the spalls that they saw on this pipe should not be patched as if it's plaster. That's a direct quote from them.
Are there any pictures?
Yes.
Becky, do you have the material? Could you send that to Becky?
Why don't you send,
I think the problem is it's in Charlton, so I don't know.
yeah,
Well, I mean, but for Becky to do something, she's going to need to be
Yeah.
able to reference something.
Yeah. Becky has it because she sent it to me. She sent it to all of us. We all got this
I don't know what
document.
you're talking about.
No, we're getting emails from these projects in Charlton for some reason. It's,
Oh, is that what you had asked me about? Yeah, I didn't
That's
get,
'cause you
I didn't get
signed
any
on.
of those
I didn't-
emails. Yeah, that's the
I
one.
got
I
it.
signed on whatever it was that,
All right, tomorrow morning, I'll email all of you with it, and at the same time, at the top, I'll tell you where this stuff about spalling is.
yeah.
All right.
you don't
well,
have to
I'm-
search.
Yeah. I'll put it on the list of letters to write. I'm still working on letters.
No, I was
So if
honestly scared.
Someone wants to take the
What?
lead on
I
it,
was
that would
scared.
be great.
Because this thing could collapse and cause a real problem. And the problem is not going to be confined just to Charlton.
Yeah.
you
Right.
you talking about the one we got just yesterday? Yeah. I'll forward it to everyone.
You got it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get it.
Because I love the way she started out by saying, I'm sorry, but we made some mistakes initially.
Is that from NEPA?
And then somebody
Yeah, yeah,
responded,
yeah.
can you put this in layman's term? I have no idea what.
Oh,
you're
yeah. I
talking
got
about.
that.
You got that, see,
Yeah.
okay. You did get that one, so.
Yeah, I-
I'll just send it
Move
to
this along
you,
here.
Becky, and
Yeah.
then.
So do I need to send
I don't get any
it?
of
What?
this. I don't know why you.
Do I still need to send it? I know
No,
that
I have no.
Stephen needs it.
Are we done?
Yep, we're done.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
David Barnacle approves.
What?
Stephen Chittister approves.
Roy Bishop approves.
Eric Gaspar, in favor.
Well, Red Sox are up by 12.
Are they? It's only.
I don't even know if they're playing today, are they?